My Hero Academia coming to an end very soon within the next few chapters, and discussions running rampant within the community on whether or not there will be a spin-off sequel series, I wanted to discuss today what I feel My Hero Academia needs in terms of a spin-off, and how it should be a prequel series that takes place during the advent of the extraordinary, aka when quirks first began manifesting in the world. Now, the reason why I said that the next spin-off should be a prequel series taking place during the time of the advent of the extraordinary is because throughout the entirety of My Hero Academia, we get glimpses here and there of that time period filled with chaos due to the manifestation of quirks, leading into the rise of vigilantes. And while we do see important events that happened back then, they always related to One for All for One, or the Meta Liberation Army. That all takes place in Japan. And when we do hear about something happening somewhere else in the world during that time period, we never really see what happened. It's just given to us with little information surrounding that specific event, such as the glowing baby being born in China and the US being the birthplace of heroes. Granted, for the most part, these little events didn't really matter in the overall narrative of the story, as the story is centered around Deku and the present day hero society, and how this hero society affects those in the current day, with the past acting as context to how we got to this current day hero society, especially when it comes to just how bad things were back then before All Might came into the spotlight. But that's what makes this time period the perfect setting for a spin-off. We know just enough that lets us know how things were back then, but we don't know everything, leaving room for a huge story that could act as an origin for certain things. You see, when it comes to My Hero Academia, since the beginning, it has always been compared to the likes of the X-Men from Marvel, a team comprised of humans born with superhuman abilities labeled as mutants. Mutants in the Marvel universe being a minority group in the world that faces a ton of discrimination and hate just because they were born differently. My Hero Academia, on the other hand, at the start of its story, quirk users over the years have become the majority, leaving humans without quirks in the minority. Because of this, for many, My Hero Academia acted as a sort of what if mutants from the Marvel universe took up the majority of the Earth's population. And while we did get glimpses and pieces of what life was like when people with quirks were the minority and treated horribly, paralleling the X-Men even more, there is still so much to explore within this time period. So with My Hero Academia being constantly compared to the X-Men in many different ways, I'd say why not just fully embrace it. Have a spin-off that takes place in the past, in the time period when quirks had begun manifesting all over the world. A time period where quirk users, or should I say metas, were a minority and treated terribly just because they were different. This could be a deep story where the protagonist of the series is someone who manifests a powerful quirk and is brought in by another meta who gathers other metas rejected by society, helping them control their powers and forming a team of vigilantes to show the world that those with meta abilities shouldn't be feared and can make a positive impact on the world, where they can all live in harmony with each other, and have it be the origin of what the present day world of My Hero Academia would end up calling a hero school. On the other end of things, the main antagonist would be doing the opposite, a meta-human that sees that the world would rather want to eradicate metas than to live in harmony with them, so they end up deciding that metas are the next step in human evolution, gathering other metas, leading them down a path to want to eradicate the non-meta population of the Earth, so that their people can live in peace without the fear of being hunted down like animals just for simply being born differently. In the main series, we see that when quirks first began manifesting in the world, it was absolute chaos. People who had quirks were disowned by loved ones, tossed out like filth. Hate groups were formed simply to take out those with meta abilities, as well as metas protesting to be treated fairly. Even the fourth user of One for All, who lived around that time period, hated it because of how they were treated. The series doesn't even need to take place in Japan either. Remember, the pro-hero system was first put into place in Rhode Island in America, where only 7 people were recognized as official heroes instead of vigilantes. So the events of this spin-off could lead to the creation of that hero system, where the only 7 quirk users to be officially accepted as heroes are from the vigilante team originally formed by the person that brought them together throughout the series, which would be in America. This spin-off has a ton of potential to be great that would not only enhance the arc that Spinner and Shoji end up going through in the final war of My Hero Academia, but we could get the origins for certain items that restrict quirk users from using their quirks, like the Iron Maidens, plus we could even get arcs that showed a different perspective of certain events that took place in that time period, such as having an arc focusing on the glowing babies movement that All For One ended. This arc would have the team come to keep the peace, similar to what happened in X-Men 97, with the X-Men going to Magneto's trial and things going south for them. Of course, in the spin-off arc, things go south for our team, as All For One comes in and ends the life of the glowing baby, stealing his quirk and killing off those who were with him. This would expand upon what we saw in My Hero Academia, as the reason why All For One did that in the first place was because someone else in the world was getting all of this recognition, making the glowing baby in All For One's eyes a sort of main character. And we all know that All For One's shtick is that he believes that he is the main character while everyone else is just extras in his story. This arc would show our hero team surviving the attack by All For One, possibly giving us an interesting fight with a younger, less experienced All For One, since All For One in My Hero Academia was shown to come back from the event with ripped clothes. So we do know that the metas during this attack fought back and of course lost, and wouldn't contradict anything that happens in My Hero Academia and what was shown during that flashback. The hero team will barely make it out alive, with this event having lasting ramifications in the spin-off, as All For One's actions sets back metas as a whole, as the world seeing this would see that metas shouldn't be trusted because they can't even trust their own kind. Which I think this would be a perfect arc for this spin-off that makes sense for the story, as we know that things didn't get better after All For One ends the glowing babies movement for peace. I mean, just listening to the 4th user of One For All not so fondly remembering how society was during his time proves that this does take a while for things to get better for metas as a whole. And even All Might's flashbacks, seeing just how messed up things were in society, is in line with this as well, though that was more just the world not being peaceful because of villains, not because the world was still in shambles because of quirks being this wild new evolutionary step that people didn't understand. We could even see a storyline following this event where the governments of the world decide that metas are walking weapons, living amongst normal humans that can, at whatever time they feel like, cause massive casualties. And let's say the US government's response to this is to create their own metas via a super soldier serum of sorts that's kept secret by the government, and they send this super soldier to attack the team. Again, there's so much that can be done with this time period, and I feel Horikoshi kept the advent of the extraordinary and the events that followed it close to One For All and Deku's story, because it's something that can be expanded upon in its own spin-off. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I don't want to see a sequel series where we possibly see Deku's journey as a hero continue, or even a story focusing on the next generation of heroes that tackles the threat of the quirk Doomsday Theory, which I will say would be an amazing sequel to My Hero Academia in itself. I just believe that with the lore already being there about how things were in the past, why not expand upon it and open the world up in a way where we see how wild these villain groups were back then. We already know that there is a book in My Hero Academia that goes over the world's most infamous villains in history. You're gonna tell me that All For One, Destro, and Oji Harima were the only big villains in history, with the US being the birthplace of heroes? Let's see it. Give me a Charles Xavier-esque hero mentor to metas and a Magneto-esque villain that mentors metas, and show us that clash of ideals in America. We know that in the end, both were right, given where the world of My Hero Academia is at in the beginning of the series, but seeing how the world acted during that time period would shed light on just how bad quirks halted the world's progress as a society. Plus, it's not like we can't get both a prequel series taking place during the advent of the extraordinary and a sequel series that takes place after the main series is over. My Hero Academia throughout its run had spin-offs like team up missions and vigilantes running in conjunction alongside one another, so why not drop 2 more spin-offs at the same time tackling 2 different stories? Anyways, let me know your thoughts on a potential My Hero Academia spin-off prequel series that takes place during the advent of the extraordinary. Is this even needed, or would you rather see something else? Let me know everything in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to Detroit smash that like button, and if you're new to the Kitoroki channel, then be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on so that you don't miss any My Hero Academia videos. With that said, I'll see you all in the next one.